I'm Renée Beaupré-White, Director of Career Services, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 5th annual Making a Living, Making a Difference Alumni Career Panel. This Soundings event is a collaboration between Career Services and the faculty of Castleton University. I'm pleased to introduce Callie Trautwein Harris, class of 2015. Callie is in her 6th year as a K-8 health teacher at Floodbrook School in Londonderry, Vermont. She is also the extended day program manager for the school's after-school program through the collaborative and the current president for the Society of Health and Physical Educators of Vermont. Callie grew up in Middlebury, Vermont and attended Castleton from 2010 to 2015. She began undecided and was planning to go into nursing until the health education major was announced in 2011. During her time at Castleton, she participated in the Student Orientation Staff, SOS, program for 3 years, and credits it with the reason she has so many great friendships and also met her husband through. Kelly is very passionate in the work she does with children in health education. She lives in Arlington, Vermont with her husband, Brendan, who also teaches their 16-month-old daughter, Emmeline, and dog, Remy. It is now my pleasure to introduce Alex Fernald, Career Services intern and member of the class of 2021, who will serve as moderator.
Hey everybody, and welcome. So Callie, we're just going to get started with a couple of questions about where you're working right now. So tell me a little bit about your journey from graduation to your current job. Tell me about, some of your current position and, what's a typical day like for you?
Yeah, so again, I'm currently a kindergarten through 8th grade health teacher at a school, Floodbrook in Londonderry, Vermont, kind of near Stratton and Bromley Mountains, so big ski towns. I've also worked with an organization called the Collaborative, which does a lot of prevention work, and they also help run our after-school program, and I started working with them as a staff member, and then just last year joined on as their, we call it manager, it's more like a kind of director of the program, so I do run an after school program. And then, like I guess I mentioned, I'm currently Shape Vermont president, so I've, that's another, when we can talk a little bit more about that, but that came around starting at Castleton, and then ironically, the president of Shape at the time when I started at Floodbrook was the president. So it's one of those things where if you know someone, you kind of then join in, and from there, that's kind of how that went. So yeah, I think it was kind of interesting. I graduated in 2015, and what was really nice, and I know my parents were kind of worried of like, okay, you're a health teacher, so like, what does that mean? Like, are you gonna find a job? And I know I was a little nervous at first, and then it just kind of fell right into it. And so I feel really fortunate for that, and was able to get into Floodbrook in a full-time position at that, whereas there was a lot of other places that were a lot of the part-time. So again, I feel really fortunate for doing that and getting to teach health and not just do a lot of the program now, do dual certification, which is absolutely the way to go. So I'm really lucky in getting to do that. So yeah, that's what we're currently doing.
Great.
Typical day, that's really tricky because it's completely different than what it used to be. So let's talk about first what it used to be. Again, I would teach kindergarten to 8th grade, probably 8 classes a day, then go right into after school, which we did from 4 to 6. Which is a lot of fun. I like working with the kids. I like being with the kids and really getting to know them, and the after school program really helps. And then Shape Vermont is great because I feel like I'm gonna repeat this a lot, but networking to me is really huge. It's a lot of who you know, or finding out someone who does know the ins and outs of things, and getting those, that kind of help.
Right, that's awesome. And it sounds like it's a pretty busy day, but what are some of the most rewarding parts of it?
I think one thing that can be really rewarding is how sometimes it feels like, the 3 different aspects, it's always like a clean slate. So like there's times where, I could have a student who's in the after school program, I could have them in class that day and they might be having a bad day, or I might be having a bad day because of something. And then after school is a way to be like, all right, reset, which is ironic because it's also at the end of the day. And I think, it's also rewarding when kids really kind of grasp the concept when it comes with like health or learning, I realize this is what this means, or setting a goal and you have a kid that comes back that's like, hey, I tried this strategy and it's working, I'm able to put my phone down or something like that. So yeah, those are kind of fun. The times where the kids can know that you reset, which means that they can reset too. Those are always the good ones.
Right. And then on the other side of that, what are some of the more challenging parts of your job?
I think it goes hand in hand with just that. Challenging can be trying to support all the kids. I think one thing I find being not an actual gen ed classroom teacher is sometimes there aren't always supports in place. So having to handle, a class of 20 when there's 2 kids, having a really tough time with something, and you're kind of by yourself, those can be really tricky situations. Same thing, even with after school, those can be kind of difficult, when the kids just had a really rough day and it just kind of continues over and it's a totally different dynamic than the school day. Yeah, this with the shape piece, it's not too bad. I think a lot of people look for support and we just try to push things out there and ask that, when other health or physical educators have a question or need something, to reach out to us instead of, getting upset about things. So
definitely, and I think that's a great resource to have. And going back to your experiences at Castleton, what parts of your education here has impacted your career the most? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to 2 things. I feel like, again, I'm going to repeat the word networking. It's, meeting new people. It's having those connections. I really think the health and physical education department is really, really great in connecting their students with that. And that was a huge help. Like I said, I knew about Shape Vermont back in college, even before starting my actual career and things like that. The other piece from Castleton was I also did the SOS program, the Student Orientation Staff Program. And like mentioned before, that played a huge role, I think, in leadership and the idea of getting a chance to teach in a way each year with a set of kids. And again, it's the networking. You meet a totally different new group of people when you are a staff member. And that was always nice, that, you've got the athletic kids, the theater, the science, all coming to work together as orientation staff. And I thought that was really awesome. Yeah, I keep pushing the word networking, because to me, I think that is huge. It's a lot of your resources and who you know.
Definitely, yeah. And you touched kind of upon, students coming from all kinds of different backgrounds. And I think that really is the pinnacle of a liberal arts type college. That's really how it kind of goes. So could you tell me a little bit, I guess, about the value of a liberal arts education, and maybe a little bit about the Soundings program as well, and how that kind of ties into it?
Yeah, no, so with Soundings, what I really liked about that was I feel like I got to be another part of myself that I didn't always make time for. Like I do enjoy theater or lectures or demonstrations, and knowing that there was a chance to do it for free was kind of nice. And so I think it helps keep it fresh, and it allows you to really find things that you enjoy doing, again, that you might not get the chance or make time for yourself to do.
Definitely, yeah. Could you also now just share with me a specific moment where you felt that you had the tools to be successful because of your experience at Castleton?
It was, a specific moment can be kind of tricky. Again, I really think when it comes to, career and what I'm doing right now, a lot of it does come from that SOS program and working with a diverse group of people. There's another time I do remember, I can't remember who it was with, but there was someone I remember helping them with a homework piece. And I remember they said the professor or whoever explained it this way, and I felt like I was able to change it, and they understood it. And I remember walking back or away from that and being like, okay, teaching is something I think I can do. It really felt like I knew how to take a concept and break it down for someone. So that was a really big help, because that was early on, actually. When I did see the health education, I was like, oh, there it is. I knew I wanted to do, be a nurse and teach eventually, but kind of those two things together really helped. But again, the leadership skills with SOS absolutely helped too.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's great that you aren't necessarily thinking about some of these tools where they come up, but when they do, it's always a pleasant surprise. And so moving into kind of now more of a present day matter, what's it like being a health teacher right now in the middle of coronavirus right now? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. You would think I would have a lot to do being a health teacher during a pandemic. Ironically, unfortunately, my job duties have changed drastically, to the point where we actually held a Shape Vermont membership meeting last week, and a lot of the health and physical educators were sharing what's going well for them, how are they doing outside, and all this and that. And I kind of felt like I was twiddling my thumbs being like, well, I'm fully remote. Well, not remote. I am only teaching online through videos, like asynchronously, like not even live with the students. And my job at school is to literally be a body. So I've subbed, I do check-ins in the morning, I help proctor a group of kids. So it's kind of hard to have to do both. It literally feels like 50-50 right now. So I do get a chance to do lessons through programs like, it's called Seesaw or Google Classroom. A lot of people would be more familiar with, perhaps. So I do get a chance to teach the kids, and I've been really focusing on not just things like hand washing or mask wearing or diseases, but my big focus has been emotional and mental health, and making sure, kids are understanding how they're feeling and what to do when we are feeling stressed or when we're not feeling the best, and how to handle situations. And with my older students, I'm working a lot with right now doing goal setting or changing our habits. I felt like if kids are at home, this is a great time to think about, what are my habits at home? Am I eating all that junk food? Am I on my phone too much? So that's been really nice.
That's great. Yeah, I think that pushing the mental health agenda is a great thing to do, especially right now, where it's super, super valuable. And it sounds like you also have to be pretty versatile during all of this, so yeah. It sounds like a really, really challenging situation. And I guess how have you overcome such challenges during all this?
I think I don't know if this is the right word, but I really feel like I started the year optimistically, meaning I knew the schools were going to have a plan. I knew it was, that's the other thing is we tell a lot of the teachers is that we're in a pandemic. Nothing is going to be normal. So I knew that, but it's kind of still shocked me how much different, like I said, like I went from, teaching, all day long to I have to actually do something completely different than what I'm contracted to do, which is to teach health right now. Yeah, I can't remember the rest of it, but yeah, so that's this point. It's very different. And the other thing that's crazy is how different each school is handling all of these. And I think everyone's plan is working how it needs to be, and people are following guidelines to the best of their abilities.
Right, yeah. And going back to your career at Castleton University, looking back on your CU experience, what do you wish that you had done? Do you have anything that you maybe forgot?
I wouldn't change it for the world. I think there are some times where, I might have wished to play a sport, maybe field hockey or softball. I did play those in high school and really enjoyed them. But I don't know. I did, like I keep mentioning the SOS program, but to me that was a lot. I have so many great friendships. My husband and I met through that program. I did for a little while, I don't even know what you want to call it, but there was a group of us who were part of like the football team for like managing. So I was doing filming. So back before they had those sky cams, I was the person that would sit up in that scissor lift and film the football games when I was at Castleton. So, and I was there at 5 a.m. practices. It was great. It was a wonderful experience.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can imagine. And then is there any one person or a group of people that if you had the opportunity to thank because of your college experience or from it, who would it be and why?
Yeah, well, it would have to be for the most part, you know, the health and physical education department, you know, so Dr. Katie Colpo, absolutely. She was a huge influence. That would go for Dr. Pleben, Mr. Weinberg, Dr. Geisler. Again, shout out to VA and the SOS program as well. And then, you know, the friends that I made from that, my suite mates and, you know, the people that I met through SOS, absolutely. Yeah, and the awesome thing is, you know, through SHAPE, like I'm still in contact with, you know, Dr. Colpo, Dr. Pleben is part of SHAPE Vermont and all those people. So I see them every single year and it keeps that networking piece going. And as a health teacher, we're always in cahoots when it comes to student teachers as well too.
I think that's awesome, yeah. And one last question for you, Callie, but first, thank you for joining us and being the first speaker in tonight's podcast. And I guess what advice would you offer CU students now?
So I had an idea and I actually had to run it by my husband to figure out how to make it kind of short and simple. And I think the biggest thing to say is we're going to call it practice showing up. And what I guess I mean by that, and it's kind of hard to do it remotely, but it's things like when there are little events, when student government puts on, you know, there's an ice cream social and come get your picture drawn. It's practice going to those because those are the little moments. If you take a friend, you take your suite mates, you get that done. Those are the little moments you're going to remember, as well as it's good practice for in your career of showing up and being there and being present and showing an interest in what you're doing. So I think that was the best way to put it because I always feel like that's what made it really enjoyable instead of being like, oh, that sounds lame, I'm not going to go. It's, hey, you know what, before we go to Houghton, I'm going to swing by and check out this little thing. So practice showing up to those things.
Well, that will wrap up this session. Callie, I want to thank you very much for participating. Our next speaker is Kristen Partesi. Kristen is an artist and educator currently employed as the art teacher at Fairhaven Union High School in Fairhaven, Vermont. She graduated from Castleton in 2012 with a bachelor's in art and K-12 arts teacher certification, and recently completed her master's in arts administration. Kristen grew up in central New Jersey and moved to Vermont in 2009. She worked as a gallery attendant at Gallery in the Field in 2011 and as an art instructor and eventual gallery coordinator at the Chaffee Art Center in 2012. Through these experiences, she discovered a genuine love for meeting new artists, promoting shows, and bringing the community together to explore new ideas. In 2013, Kristen was hired as a long-term substitute at Fairhaven Union High School, which led to her current role as the full-time art teacher, where she teaches classes in drawing, painting, ceramics, world arts, and digital art. She believes strongly in the power of making connections, which have guided her on her professional journey. She prides herself on her values, ethics, ability to creatively adapt, and passion for the importance of the art.
So could you tell me a little bit about, you know, what's kind of been going on between you graduating and where you're at now? Talk a little bit about your current position and what's a typical day like for you?
So I'm currently the art teacher at Fairhaven Union High School, and I work with students grades 9 through 12. And so I teach a variety of different subjects in the arts. I am the only art teacher at the high school level there. So I teach everything from intro to art to a broad range of kind of middle level courses and then an advanced art course. Going back to, you know, how I ended up at Fairhaven, I know my introduction sort of talked a little bit about my sort of journey there, but it's definitely something that I want to go back to the idea of connections, and that really started at Castleton, and what led me to Fairhaven were all those different experiences. And the thing that actually started off my career in the arts and making those connections was a show that a professor of mine, Bill Ramage, was having at Gallery in the Field in Brandon. And that was the first connection that I made at Gallery in the Field. I had gone up there to see his show. I started talking to the people there. They needed a gallery attendant for the weekends. They were looking for somebody. I was an art major at the time, and I was like, yeah, I would love to do that. And that was really kind of my first step into the arts world. And then from that job, I feel like that really brought me into the Chaffee Art Center eventually. And then that job worked its way into the coordinator position, which was short term, but I think that the experiences there kind of proved that I could build courses for kids, build classes. I could manage a lot of different things at once and multitask. And I think it really helped me get the position at Fairhaven. And so from 2012 to 2013, it was a short time before I got hired at the high school, but I have to go back to those experiences that started in 2011 while I was at Castleton, and just how one thing kind of led to the next. And the long-term sub position I got at Fairhaven ended up turning into a full-time position the following year. And so that's kind of what led me there. And I was very lucky and fortunate to find those jobs locally. I knew I wanted to stay in Vermont, and it's really been fun to work 15 minutes down the road from Castleton University. And yeah, I would say, a typical day in my job as an art teacher is really trying to work with a variety of students. And, I work in so many different materials, and it's kind of ever changing every year. And so you kind of never know like how things are going to go each day. And I love that. I love, waiting to see how the kids respond to certain prompts for art projects, and just getting to work with a new group of students each year. And so it's kind of like an ever-changing job, I would say. And but really, to me, a lot of energy, and I love seeing what the kids create with each new project. And it's just like I love the excitement of that, because it's always going to be different, because there's always new kids creating these different projects and working with these different materials. But
yeah, cool. And so you talked a little bit about how you're the only person in the department, right? And so, what are some of the challenges that come along with that?
So while I'm the only art teacher, I am lucky to work with a department that is kind of interdisciplinary. So I have music teachers and a library specialist, a reading specialist, and some faculty who work in an alternate program. And so I have a really great group of faculty that I do work with in my department. But being the only art teacher, it definitely makes you wear, I think, a lot of hats, and you have to make decisions for your program that you think are going to be best for your students and the community and for the school and the district. So there's a little bit of that feeling like a little bit of pressure that I put on myself to really try to do a good job with that, and listen to what the kids sort of say about different things, what their interests are, and try to build a program that I think is going to help them grow as artists and be exposed to more artwork from, art history and contemporary artists. And so it forces you to really like come up with a lot of new ideas. I've also tried to reach out to other art teachers in the area and establish some connections with other high school art teachers. So it's helped me kind of broaden my horizons, I guess, with my connections, because I don't have that other art teacher in the same building as myself. I also like to work with the art teachers that we do have on the K-8 level. So it's nice to have those conversations. So I think it's really made me focus again on those connections and reaching out and making sure that I do have a good support system when I have ideas that I want to, bounce off of people and get feedback on. But I think it also has made me very focused, and I have to make sure that I'm organized, and because I'm the one who's going to be doing the budget and planning all the courses and building curriculum for the arts at the high school level. So
yeah. And so it sounds like networking and making these connections, whether that's in the high school or at Castleton, seem really important. And so I wanted to go back a little bit to your Castleton education. What aspect of that was the most impactful for your career?
So I think that one of the things that drew me to Castleton was the small town thing and the family feeling. And I do think that that has stayed with me, this idea of building those connections and learning how to reach out to people and how to connect to people. Where I grew up, there's a lot of people, and it's, you don't get as much of that personal conversation. And I felt like when I was at Castleton, I kind of always had that. I could always go to talk to different professors or my advisors. And I think that working with that small town sort of thing and that community feeling and that family feeling has certainly changed the way that I look at the world around me in some ways. And it makes me feel like I can connect with any kind of person because I've had a lot of those experiences at Castleton. And I've learned that through the way that, my professors and advisors sort of worked with us. And I've tried to carry that into my own career, if that makes sense, and just look at the sort of the world around me in my community as a family, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it sounds like, you're really kind of making friends and making great connections with people from all over. And that really does tie into the whole liberal arts kind of idea that Castleton has. And so how do you think that, a liberal arts education like the ones that we have here, how do they help out of classroom experiences and help you build important relationships? How do you feel about that?
So I think that a liberal arts education is really important because it teaches you, it gives you a lot of well-rounded experiences, and it teaches you a little bit of everything. And I think that is such a crucial element of making connections with people, because not everybody that I interact with in my life is going to love art and, come from just that point of view. So I think that the whole, to me at least, the whole idea of a liberal arts education is seeing how all those different subject areas are interconnected and how we can have more than one interest and we can connect with other people by understanding that I'm not just an artist, right? I'm also into music. I love math. I'm really into history, right? And by having those experiences in the liberal arts and taking all these different courses and working with a wide variety of people and subject matters, I think it really has helped me not only connect with people just in a social sense or networking sense, but it definitely, I would say, directly relates to my ability to connect with my students in my particular profession as a teacher, because I obviously have students sitting in that classroom who have a wide variety of interests. And in order to get them to kind of invest in the idea that the arts are important to them personally, I have to be able to make those connections to them of why would I be interested in the arts if I'm, going into criminal justice or something, how do I bridge that connection of, why the arts still matter, even if you're not going to be a stereotypical artist or something. And I think that the liberal arts thing has really helped me in that sense, because I have a little bit of knowledge in a wide variety of things, and I can make those connections through that knowledge, and I can have conversations on all these different subjects. And I think that is true for really any profession. Because when you start to work with, the people that you work with or the people that you interact with in your career are not all going to come from the same background and the same major. And so I think the whole idea of the liberal arts thing is that we start to open our mind up to how things are connected and how you can find those connections between different subjects and understand the importance of all of it together,
Yeah. And I think that's a really great skill set to have. And so to go alongside that, could you tell me about maybe a specific moment when you felt like you had the tools to become successful because of your experience at Castleton?
So this one is kind of a hard question for me, because I don't know that I could necessarily point to one exact experience, but because I think it's more of a feeling and an understanding of community and the people around me that have sort of just been a part of all of the different challenges that I've faced. I think that, to me, that one of the things that Castleton gave me was the tools to be sort of an independent thinker and find ways to reach out to people when I need help or an opinion. going back to those personal connections that you make in a smaller school like that, and having those one-on-one conversations and that community and family feeling, I guess, it has helped me solve problems because I'm not afraid to go talk to somebody in person or reach out to somebody to find the answer. I think that's also helped me when I try to do some community arts projects with the kids, like being able to reach out to different community members and have those sort of personal conversations and hopefully make a connection with people. So I feel like it's more of a sort of way of being that Castleton sort of led me to in the experiences I had I was there for 3 years as a transfer student, but I think it's like all of those things that have kind of come together. So it's hard to like pinpoint one thing. I would say that working 15 minutes away and kind of staying connected has certainly helped me when I was first starting to teach, and I was trying to think, how am I going to get the kids more involved in the community, or, where do I start trying to reach out to people? And because I maintain so many connections at Castleton and it still feels like a family, I mean, that feels like a home away from home for me, that campus. It was really easy to reach out to people. Like I instantly knew people that I could call up or email and say, hey, can I bring some students over to do a visit? Or, we talked about starting the high school art show, and that was something that Castleton started. It was really cool to see them take on that project, and now it's something that I have my students involved in, and it's just been really easy to give my students opportunities because I know how to maintain personal connections with people. And again, that's sort of like an underlying skill that I feel like just all of the experiences at Castleton kind of instilled in me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's awesome. Yeah. And then looking back on your experience with Castleton and when you were in college, is there anything that you wish you had done or maybe done differently?
Yeah, so I really wish that I had studied abroad. I think the biggest mistake I made, and I would say this is definitely kind of advice for current students, is I thought, well, I want to get my degree done in 4 years. And I transferred in. I had gone to community college for a year. I transferred in and I had 3 years left. And I took, summer courses and all sorts of things to make sure that I could graduate in those 4 years. And I think looking back, I kind of wish that maybe I had done an extra semester if I could have figured that out so that I could have worked in the study abroad thing. It didn't work for me at the time because I was so focused on meeting all these requirements. And I really regret that I didn't find a way to make that happen, or do something. I know they do like some study abroad things, not necessarily during a traditional semester. I know I've seen things like that pop up, and I really wish I had taken those on. So that's something I would really encourage. Like if there's trips or activities or study abroad or things like that, if I could go back and do it over again, I would have joined into more of that. So yeah, that's my one regret, is not studying abroad, not taking up that opportunity.
Definitely, yeah. And is there any one group of people or just one person in general, if you could thank from your college experience, who would it be and why?
So I mean, certainly I would say everyone from the education department at the time and also the arts department in general. I mean, just all those people were super helpful. I felt like there was always a door open that I could go talk to somebody, and that was like really helpful for me when I was trying to figure out my schedule and how to fit classes in. And anytime I was having any problems, when I went into like student teaching and I was struggling with things, I mean, there was a professor there. I don't think he's there anymore. I guess I'll say his name was Tim Cleary, and he was one of the education professors at the time. And he was my advisor for a period of time, and he was super, super helpful. So I would say if I could thank like one person in particular, he really helped me get through like the student teaching stuff. But then the art department too, I had advisors in both, which was kind of cool. So I know like, I think Rita was my advisor in the art department, and so she was very helpful with the sort of arts related side of my degree. But I think, gosh, there's just so many different people. There were people that got me connected with community projects. That was something that actually the arts department, and I think it was Rita who helped with this, but we did a project called the Hearts of Rutland. And if you're ever in Rutland, or they're in other areas too, and they're like these large heart sculptures that people have painted. And it was to benefit both art education and then eventually, and because of the timing of it, it ended up also going to benefit Hurricane Irene relief. And it was just an amazing project to be involved in. So that was really cool to kind of get my foot in the door with community arts projects and the idea of like kind of giving back to the community through the arts. So, man, there's so many people that I think really helped throughout the years, but I would say those are some people that stand out to me from my time there. And I know I'm forgetting people, so I feel bad. That question's kind of hard. There's a lot of people.
That's no worries. Yeah, there's definitely all kinds of people to think about there. And so now kind of going back to your job now in Fairhaven, what is it like now, especially with the coronavirus? How are you overcoming some of the challenges that you're facing with it?
I think the number one thing in general with teaching, and then especially with this new COVID situation, is adaptability and being able to take on challenges and work through them, even if it's one day at a time for certain things. But I would say the biggest change has just been that flexibility and trying to teach in a new set of ways. I mean, we're doing some remote learning, we're doing some hybrid type learning. And so that has been certainly a challenge. You know, this is my 8th year as an art teacher, and it's interesting that like it really is an ever-changing career. And this year especially has taught me that, you know, you have to be ready to adapt and figure out what's going to work best and work with your colleagues and have those conversations and try to figure it out together. And I'm really proud of the way that, you know, the students and my colleagues have been adapting to this whole situation. But I think, you know, the flexibility and adaptability has been a challenge for this year, and working with all the new protocols and procedures and things like that. But yeah, I mean, the remote learning has been a big change, you know, getting used to teaching things online and through videos, or, you know, checking in and trying to still maintain those connections with students is I think the main focus for a lot of us right now. And just trying to look to the future, not knowing exactly what the timeline is for a lot of things, and, you know, and being okay with that and saying, you know, whatever comes next, I'm going to be able to face those challenges when they come. And I think that's important, you know, maybe in any career and in life in general. But as an educator, it's like, you know, you have this group of students that you're trying to, you know, instill knowledge in and give them experiences and give them a really good education. And so you have to, yeah, definitely learn how to adapt to things. So that's something that this situation has been helping me strengthen that skill quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I think if 2020 had a word, it would definitely be adaptability. It's the big one. Yeah. And so I have one last question, but first, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You know, we really appreciate you taking your time to answer some of these questions. And so lastly, what advice would you offer current CU students?
So I think, you know, I'm going to go back to the connections thing. I really believe in, you know, kind of that idea of like the 6 degrees of separation. Like everyone is kind of connected in some way. And one thing I've learned is that the more that you kind of reach out to people and the more that you try to talk to more people, connect, you know, take job opportunities that come up, be open-minded and understand that everything will kind of lead you to a new door or a new path. Again, when I think about taking a chance on that very first job up at Gallery in the Field in Brandon, I mean, that was, at the time, it was like a 45-minute commute for me to go up there. You know, it was like 1 day a week, and I was like, am I really going to take on this job? But I took the chance to make that connection, and that connection grew into so many other connections in the community, and it was an amazing experience. I worked with incredible people there. I got to know a phenomenal artist, Fran Bull, who ran the place, you know, was running this place at the time, and these are connections that I still have today, and I'm so thankful that I took that chance. And I think that for me is the biggest advice, that it may take a while to get sort of where your vision is. Like my vision was to become an art teacher. And, it took me a little while to figure out how to get there, but I think it's all about connections and being open-minded to the opportunities that come your way and, taking that chance and getting to know people in the community and, eventually you'll get where you want to go.
Our next speaker is Megean Martin. Megean earned her bachelor's degree in psychology with concentrations in health and developmental psychology and a minor in statistics, and graduated in 2012. After graduating, she received her master's in mental health counseling from SUNY Albany, graduating in 2013. Megean also earned a school counseling endorsement from the College of St. Joseph and has returned to Castleton in pursuit of a principal endorsement. Megean currently works full-time for Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union as a social emotional learning coach and part-time for Castleton Psychology Department, teaching cognitive behavioral therapy and human growth and development.
Could you tell me a little bit about your journey from graduation to your current job? What's your current position like, and what's a typical day for you?
So my current position is a social emotional coach. So by trade, I'm a licensed school counselor, but that is not what I originally intended out to be when I left Castleton. So currently I spend a lot of time looking at schools within Rutland Northeast discipline data, like attendance trends. I help classroom teachers with classroom management skills. And then if we have a student that sort of rises to the level of a more specific behavioral plan, then I would come and observe and give suggestions. I started off trying to be a mental health counselor, and I did do that for a couple of years with Rutland Mental Health. But I really appreciate the school schedule, and there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity without being a licensed mental health clinician in our area to sort of get started outside of community agencies. So I fell into school, and I have loved it.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like a really, really great path to take. What about the job is most rewarding for you?
I really enjoy being around students, and being a social emotional coach, a district-wide employee, gives me the benefit of being around kindergartners, well, including preschoolers, actually, preschoolers all the way to 12th graders. So it's pretty neat. It doesn't get boring. I can go hang out with a couple kindergartners one day and play centers, and then I can go have some different types of conversations with older students and be involved with student council, and that's pretty unique.
Cool. And it sounds like a really wide variety of students. Is that a challenge to you at all?
I don't think so. I've spent a lot of time in my life with different groups of students. My first job as a school counselor was strictly K-2. So I'm really comfortable around little kids. But prior to that, when I worked at a hospital setting, I was with adolescents. So it's okay.
Great. So it sounds like you have a lot of good background for this. What aspects of your Castleton education have impacted your career the most?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I feel like I can't get away from Castleton. I really have gained a lot of experience at Castleton for the psych aspect of it. I had some really awesome professors with the psychology department that I really think helped molded my work ethic and just overall professionalism. And then Castleton's still helping me out because I'm in their graduate principal endorsement courses right now. So I'm taking classes through the education department. And that's really opening my eyes to sort of school law and a lot more of the political components of being a school employee. Right.
And so Castleton is really very much a liberal arts focused school. And so, how has that kind of helped your out of classroom experience and relationships like that?
So I think Castleton, being a liberal arts school, has really helped me be able to have conversations with lots of different people and understand multiple perspectives. Castleton is small and in a majority white state. We know these things. So I have really tried hard to incorporate in my classes conversations on race and poverty and how marginalized populations are represented throughout, my curriculum in human growth and development, but often left out of the textbook. So I'm hoping that I can contribute to my students in the same way that Castleton contributed to my experience in understanding different groups of people.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. And I think that privilege is something that isn't really talked about as much. And it should definitely be touched on a little bit more in some of these more homogenous groups, you know. Can you share with me a specific moment where you felt like you had the tools to be successful because of your time at Castleton?
Yes, I can think of a very specific example, actually. So when I was interviewing for graduate school at UAlbany, we got put in this giant room, and there was about 50 of us there, obviously post, pre-corona times. And the head of the program said, only 25 of you, so about half of you, will be accepted into the program after today's interviews. And I can remember thinking, like, oh, great, this is like no pressure. So I was shuffled along in between different professors asking interviews, and I was channeling like my inner Dr. Bergen. So I think you also had the privilege of having Dr. Bergen, and just I could hear him in my head saying, Sinjin. He called me Sinjin. I made a name of St. John. And I could hear him saying, like, Sinjin, be professional, sit up straight, don't have your poor posture, and talk like you know what you're saying. So the whole thing, I went through that, and I, sort of just kept hearing him in my head, trying to bring forth my best personality and answer the questions as best I could. And it worked because I got in. So that I really carried with me a lot of what he has said, and the other professors from the psych department. It was kind of like a home away from home.
Definitely. And I do remember you telling me that story as well. I think that was a really cool moment. And now kind of shifting back to present day more now, what's it like working, within the school system and being that type of mental health coach in a COVID-19 world? What's it like?
I feel like it's really different for many different people, right? Like everyone has sort of a different perspective of what's going on. Students by far are really happy to be back at school. So they are way more flexible than a lot of my colleagues in a sense. I actually started pairing up with a couple of the other school counselors throughout the district, and we're offering staff support groups. So we've actually been leading groups after school hours every other week to try and help build up the coping capacity of our staff members, because I think they just needed a place to sort of vent and wrap their head around what's going on. So I've toned down like a little bit of my CBT course to make it very user friendly, and we're doing a lot of cognitive behavioral strategies with staff just to sort of help normalize their experience.
That's awesome. Yeah. And now, I guess going back again to the Castleton experience, looking back on it, is there anything that you wish you had done differently?
Anything I wish I had done differently?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I really loved being at Castleton. I tell my current students every semester, like there's days that I wake up and in that morning fog, I think like I'm gonna roll over and still be living in one of the houses and have to get up and like go to Houston for breakfast, and then it hits me that I'm a full-grown adult now, right? So I don't think so. I really loved being at Castleton, and I still love being at Castleton. I think it's one of the reasons why I continue to sign up every semester to teach part-time. It just has left a huge imprint on my heart.
That's really great. And is there any group of people or one person in particular that if you could thank, who would it be and why?
I think that I would thank the three professors that I spent the most time with out of the psych department. So Dr. Bergen, Dr. Klein, and Dr. Fry.
Great. Yeah. And I've got one more question, but first, thank you, Megan, for joining us. We really appreciate your input for some of these questions and all the previous speakers as well. Yeah. What advice would you offer to current CU students now?
I think the most relevant advice I could give them right now is to hang tight, like keep working really hard. I know this semester royally sucks in terms of, it's not the typical college experience, but your professors care about you. I certainly care about all my students, and hang in there. It'll get better, and this won't be your whole story.
I'm delighted to now introduce our last panelist for the session, Nick Minarik, class of 2013. Nick graduated with his English degree and is the Vice President of Operations at Gundam Planet. Nick coordinated closely with Andy Alexander, Professor of English in Gundam Planet, a New Jersey small business specializing in import collectible hobby products during his junior year as part of an internship for credit through the English department. As part of that internship, he edited thousands of product descriptions on the website's catalog and became familiar with the industry over the course of the year-long project. When the business manager opted to return to his home in Japan, Nick was offered the position of full-time manager only 5 months after graduation. Since then, he has helped expand the business from $250,000 a year to over $2 million a year and has been promoted to vice president, the position he currently holds.
So the first question we have, it seems like you've kind of been really moving up the ranks in the last, several years. So could you tell me a little bit about your journey from you graduating Castleton to where you are now? And, tell me about what your current position is like, in a typical day, and what are some of the rewards and challenges of those?
Well, the first part of the question is pretty easy because, I literally graduated and then got the job just because of the internship that I had through Castleton, so that worked really well. But in terms of moving up the ranks from where I was to where I am, it's kind of interesting because when I started, I was given the position of quote unquote manager, which was it was the owner and then me, and I did everything. And since then, rather than really move up the ranks have kind of added in under me, and I've just become responsible for more things over the years, which, going from an English intern editing product descriptions for credit to just running the show, that's just kind of how it progressed from Castleton to now. But to summarize what I do now, it's kind of important to distinguish between the industry standard VP of operations and what I'm doing, which industry standard VP of operations would be like, I need to make sure that everyone under me is performing duties satisfactorily to make sure that the business goals are being met. I'd be coordinating with shipping manager, marketing manager, warehouse manager, inventory manager, doing all of that and kind of the big picture stuff to problem solve and implement change in coordination with the owner. But since we are a business of less than 10 people still that is doing millions of dollars a year in business, I just need to basically be doing everything myself at some points. So, I have a customer service manager. If they don't come in, I'm the customer service manager. So when you're asking me to describe a typical day, that's actually really hard to do because I never know what's going to happen. Like just Tuesday, we got a shipment that wasn't scheduled to come in. So I need to count the shipment, make the listings on the website, and then also produce marketing material to post on social media. And it's just one of those like crazy fields where I never know what a typical day is. So that's just kind of become my life.
That makes total sense. And that's kind of crazy as well. I can imagine. And so, it sounds like you're really well-rounded. And I think that really does sum up the idea. And we've talked about it a little bit previously of the idea of the liberal arts education. And, could you tell me about how that's helped you personally through Castleton, being a part of a liberal arts education?
Well, I could just be obnoxious and say, well, it just got me my job, but I'll be a better example than that. Because Castleton actually set me on the path to finding out what I actually cared about, which I think that a lot of people write off the importance of that. Because I came into Castleton swearing up and down that I was going to be a psychology major, and then for some reason I don't really understand, I got yanked out of my FYS grouping, and I got put into the honors program, which I'm not even sure if they still do great ideas in Castleton curriculum. But that was my first year seminar, and I really liked it. I ended up there. I immediately met one of my closest friends I've ever had, and John Gillen was the professor at the time. I think he's retired by then, but he helped push me to do and try more things, and just kind of try and broaden your concept of what you're doing in college. So I dropped psych major before even declaring, switched to music, found out that was like harder than calculus. So I was going all over the place freshman year, and I decided to spend basically my entire sophomore year just kind of picking and choosing, like filling out frames of reference, going to soundings, trying to figure out what I was doing. And then I just found English, and I found the professors in the English department that I really liked them, and the course material was genuinely engaging, and it was just really important for me to be able to have the time to try and figure out what actually resonated with, my developing college self. And Castleton, I guess, saw my latent ability somewhere and was able to hone in on it, and they pushed me to stop underachieving, basically, and I like really drove myself into the ground to try and do the best I could because of the people I found in the English department.
That's great. Yeah. And so if you've already answered it, that's fine. We can move ahead. But what aspects of your Castleton education have impacted you the most?
Oh yeah, I guess that's kind of the same. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of the same question, but I really think, let's see. I'm trying to think of a way that isn't just liberal arts.
Yeah, and that's if we want to skip, that's totally fine as well. We can just move ahead.
Okay, I do think it is like, let's just say the faculty, because like John Gillen especially in the first year, there was a couple times I mentioned I met my best friend in freshman year, and she transferred after one semester. And when you're a freshman in college with one semester, your roommate leaves and your best friend leaves, and it's tough. And I started slipping in class a little bit, and instead of just John Gillen being like, hey, like, get it together, he would like pull me aside and talk to me and try and figure out what was going on and try and figure out solutions. And like, he put me back on track before I was even really off track. So I do think that it's a combination of the people there and the ability they let the liberal arts setting that lets you figure out what's going on. And it's so cliche, but they just find yourself and find what it is that you care about.
For sure. Yeah. And could you share with me a specific moment when you felt like you had the tools you needed to be successful because of your experience at Castleton?
Well, so I kind of explained in the first question how every single day I could be called upon to do literally anyone's job where I work. And that also includes customer service manager. And I'm guessing anyone who's worked in customer service has had one of those I want to speak to your manager moments happen to them. And for me, like, I'm the manager they speak to. So that sucks, but it is what it is. But every once in a while, we get into like a really particularly troublesome customer who is just like demanding something that is like 300% unreasonable. Like this one time, this guy ordered something at 11 p.m., which we're not open, and by 7 a.m., when we're also not open, was demanding a free item because we had not shipped his package yet, which anyone with a brain can be like, it is physically impossible to ship a package between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. But I can't even count the number of times that I've been able to like I don't want to say wage psychological warfare, but I will say like I use my mastery of the English language to convince them of the error of their own thinking. And so like it's not easy, but having taken so many courses in so many fields before setting my sights on English, which I like have sharpened into a point, I ended up with a ton of different viewpoints that I can use to see where people are coming from and appeal to their broader sense of humanity on their own terms. So like that's actually a really rewarding part of it, when I have managed to use like all of my different worldviews combined with the way that I use the English language to basically turn someone's mind around without them getting mad about it. Like that's so useful, and it's one of my favorite things to do. It's so rewarding when I get you're right, I'm sorry for being mad. Like it is so good. So I think that every time that happens is when it really comes into play.
That's an amazing story. And going back to your current job now, how is it different as a result of the coronavirus pandemic? Is it any different?
Well, the funny thing is I actually left Gun and Plant at the end of 2019 because I was like, it's a tough job. I was burning out, get a ton of responsibilities and like not the best pay. And I took an opportunity for more money and less work as a lab tech. But when COVID hit, like they had only been without me for 3 months, and that's not a lot of time to adjust to the second in command just not being there. So I realized like this business and possibly the industry are like in very big trouble right now. So I decided to try and work 2 full-time jobs, which that was awful. I don't know how I survived that, but it actually I realized like I am not fulfilled at the lab tech job. It is easier, but it is soulless, and I came back. So in one way, yes, coronavirus brought me back to my current job, but also it's just like it made me realize that the best policy for I think any business, but especially mine, is complete transparency. Because if we're going to be doing something, like I'm just writing statements about why we're doing it, because there were so many construction delays and product cancellations, and just like everyone knows how insane this year has been, and customers always want to know exactly what's up. So I just tell them like there's nothing wrong with being open and honest about why everything is the way it is. And a lot of that comes down to just being able to word things in a way that you can be saying, we really don't know, and I'm very sorry we don't have any information, but also be respectful about it. Like, we can't be mad, like, we can't expect customers not to be mad that we don't have information. So we just need to find a way to be apologetic about it and transparent about it. And, you know, a mastery of English is extremely useful when you need to spend as much time as this, like, being direct with so much of humanity. And that's mostly what we've had to change as a result of coronavirus.
Right. And I think that's a great mindset to have. And now going back again, jumping back, looking back on your experience at Castleton, is there anything that you wish you had done or done differently?
It was actually like a really fulfilling 3.5 years. I graduated a semester early. I don't regret that, but I do wish that I'd worked less. Just because I worked sophomore to senior year, bordering on full-time. It was one of those things where they give you like 30 hours so they don't have to give you health insurance. But it was a long time where I just worked full-time at the Dick's Sporting Goods in Rutland, and I really put my heart into it and took it way too seriously. You know, I was all the manager's favorites because I didn't screw around. And I wish I'd had more time to actually experience college. And I'm not even saying like party more. I wasn't like that either. Like, I hated Sem House. I hated going to the bricks. But I just wish that I'd, you know, snowboarded more, like actually walked onto the tennis team when I got the chance, gone to more concerts, like actually enjoyed life, because I built my schedule so intensely around work, where I would have classes from 9 to 2 every day, so that any time that I needed to close from 2 to 10, I would be open. So like huge chunks of my life were just blocked off, and I didn't really get the chance to enjoy what are actually, in retrospect, the best years of your life. And I know that's another cliche, and no one who's listening is going to believe me, because you can't believe it until you leave and you want to go back and live it again. So definitely that, like, just taking advantage of, I love the small college environment. I love the campus. Like, I love just chilling in the dorms, and definitely more of that alongside of just going to school and being a kid.
For sure. And is there any one person or a group of people that if you could thank from your college experience, who would it be and why?
I mean, one person, obvious, I gotta say Andy Alexander. But if a group of people, as I mentioned, definitely the English professors, just because the amount of times that I went into the office at Leavenworth to just talk to Denny, Joyce, John Gillen, Andy, it's just too much to count. And they all love to teach, and they put their hearts into it. And whenever a student reciprocates interest in, you know, a field that, you know, not super many people are even engaging with anymore, they just light up. And I really like that. And I remember when I used to write op-eds for the Spartan, and I used to think I was like this big brain hotshot. Like, I would just wander in and ask them quote unquote questions to make you think, as if they hadn't been around the block 50,000 more times than me. And the one time I asked Denny and Joyce if they thought video games could be literature, and they both laughed at me, but they gave me the time of day, because at least I was, one, thinking about their subject matter, and 2, engaging with them outside of class. And like, you know, yeah, looking back at that, I'm embarrassed by how stupid I was for just like thinking that I was opening their minds to something. But I think we all just need to thank professors for, you know, being the way that they are and welcoming us into their place. And technically it's their job, but teaching is, you know, it is a labor of love. They're not out there making billions of dollars, but they're doing it because they love it. And I don't think that any group of teachers embodies that more than the English department.
I think that's a great message. And one last question is, what advice do you have to offer current CU students?
Man, it's definitely, I thought about this one a bit, because it's especially with the changing landscape of the State College of Vermont, which like even I can't keep up with since I left, but like, yes, you're at a state university and a liberal arts school, both of which are things that people tend to look down their noses at if they're not also at one. But just because you're at a state university and a liberal arts school doesn't mean you can't take it seriously and make something of it. Because like when I was there, and I'm sure before I was there and after I was there, so many students go there, they screw around with courses, they take 12 credits a semester and just goof off and then declare a business major junior year and graduate. And that's not a knock on business majors at all, but it's a knock on like not taking the school you chose seriously and then doing nothing that interests you with it. Because like, what are you spending tens of thousands of dollars on if you're just using it as a glorified excuse to party and, you know, play acoustic guitar with uncut strings in the Hewden gazebo? Like, yeah, you have more fun than I did and you enjoy the best years of your life, but you also need to set your sights on something and accomplish it. And just because you're at CU and not Princeton doesn't mean that your accomplishment is any less meaningful than someone else's. And that's a mindset that everyone needs to get into more. Like, you know, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but when I roll up behind some Hyundai Sonata with a Cornell sticker on it, it never once crosses my mind that I got anything less out of life because I went to Castleton and not Cornell and not Princeton. And I would actually say that I'm happier now than I would have been had I gone anywhere else. And again, big shout out to Andy Alexander for repeatedly going to bat for me and believing I had what it takes to make all of his efforts worth it.
That's perfect. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and effort to answer these questions. And I'm going to hand it back over to Renee and we'll close it out.
No problem.
Great. So this concludes our 5th Soundings Alumni Career Panel. I'd like to thank Callie, Kristen, Megan, and Nick for participating. It's been wonderful having you and listening to your stories. I'd also like to thank Alex Fernald, who served as our moderator for all of these sessions, Trish Vanderspray, and Molly Marcy. We look forward to hosting the 6th annual next year.